Now, you may find yourself tempted to spunk out a ridiculous amount of cash on the latest shiny Samsung or Apple smartphone, but before you do, don't. Or at least don't until you've watched all of this video about the best mid-range smartphones and also given it a thumbs up and poke subscribe because it's that bloody good. For around 400 quid or sometimes a bit less, you can get yourself a beefy blower boasting a gorgeous OLED screen, feature-packed cameras, some serious grunt for gaming, a bit of 5G action if you fancy some of that. They'll basically do everything a flagship phone can, but for half the price. You've got lots more spare cash to blow on booze and, well, yeah, that'll do actually. Hooray! So here's my personal pick of the very best mid-range smartphones right now that you can grab for around or under £400. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, one of the most impressive all-round mid-range phones right now is Google's Pixel 6a, which has the added bonus of being pleasantly dinky at just 6.1 inches. So not only can I use it one-handed, but I can also slip it into my jeans with relative comfort and pleasure. Now, packed inside of that dinky plastic frame is Google's very first Tensor chipset, which also happens to power the Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro flagship phones. And here on the Pixel 6a, this handles everything, including a bit of light gaming without a grumble, although more intensive titles do cause it to stumble quite a bit. The OLED screen is a stunner, pretty standard for a mid-range mobile, although you don't get the nippy 90Hz refresh of many rivals. And like most phones at this price point, there's bugger-all headphone jack, so it is Bluetooth all the way, baby. You got pretty much the same camera tech as last year's Pixel 5a, but thanks to that Tensor chipset's clever clogs image processor and Google's usual software smarts, you can capture great looking photos at any time of day and even at night. The clarity and color detail with night mode active is just kind of nuts. Battery life is also solid, and because this is a Google branded blower, of course you've got that glorious stock Android experience with the guaranteed 3 years of OS updates and 5 years of security updates. So overall, if you want yourself a compact phone that can pretty much do it all except for more hardcore gaming, the Pixel 6a is well worthy of that special place in your pants or bag if you carry your phone in a bag. Now, one of the Pixel's most impressive rivals at this sort of price is the OnePlus Nord 2T, which boosts the overall performance for any proper gaming fans out there. The OnePlus Nord 2T is powered by MediaTek's Bicep Flexin Dimensity 1300 chipset, which can absolutely blaze its way through any Android game out there. Good old Genshin is handled with nary a bead of sweat, helped along by those dedicated gaming tools. You've once again got yourself an OLED screen, this time a 6.43-inch AMOLED panel, with the added bonus of a faster 90Hz refresh rate, as well as another decent enough stereo speaker setup. So the OnePlus Nord 2T is just as great for kicking back with some Netflix action or your favourite bold tech twat. The Nord 2T's 4500 mAh battery serves up enough screen on time to make it through a pretty long intensive day even for fairly demanding users, and it also supports 80-watt fast charging when you bung a cable in it as well, which is pretty ridiculous at this sort of price point. Oxygen OS is as customizable as ever, with the guarantee of a few years of software updates to keep it fresh and secure. And while that 50 meg primary camera sensor can't quite capture pics as cleanly and as capably as the Pixel, it is still well up to the job of everyday snaps and sharp looking home movies. And if you're tempted but your budget can't quite stretch up to that OnePlus Nord 2T, well, no worries. For 100 quid less, you can always snaffle yourself the OnePlus Nord CE2 5G, which is still a very capable wee blower. The design is downgraded to plastic and you've got a more basic mono speaker setup instead, but you still get great sound and audio via Bluetooth or the headphone jack, and that AMOLED screen is another 90Hz Full HD cracker, so media fans should be plenty sated. Gaming is smooth and satisfying on lighter titles like PUBG and Call of Duty Mobile, and even on Genshin Impact if you keep the graphics settings low, helped along again by the gaming mode, while the Dimensity 900 chipset handles everything else just as capably. And sure, the 64 meg primary camera is fairly basic, but it's still fine as long as the lighting isn't cack. Now, certainly one of the more distinctive smartphones you'll find at this price range is the Nothing Phone 1, which starts from 399 quid and offers some decent specs to again rival that Google Pixel 6a. Forget the flashy lights on the back end, because chances are after piddling about with them for your first day or two, you'll basically forget they even exist. To me, that glyph lighting is just like an attention-seeking child absolutely off its tits on Haribo. But get past all that attention-seeking bollocks and you'll find you've got yourself a very capable mid-range mobile. After several updates, the various bugs and the less than impressive battery life have mostly thankfully been sorted right out. And not only can you now just about generally squeak through a full day of use on just a single charge, but you've also got support on the Nothing Phone 1 for wireless charging, which is an incredibly rare feature at this sort of price. That OLED screen is a delight like most rivals, the stereo speaker setup is decent, and this blower is nippy enough to play any game out there, Genshin Impact included. Plus, if you want an Android that looks like an iPhone for whatever friggin' reason, this is probably about the closest you'll come with its chunky flat-edged frame. Nothing's camera setup is gloriously streamlined, so you won't find any pointless macro nonsense or any of that other bollocks here, and it's good enough to grab good looking pics and home movies even in reasonably testing conditions. It's only really in proper low light where that camera stumbles a bit and the Pixel 6a starts to show its dominance, but apart from that it's hard to really nitpick much about the Nothing Phone beyond the usual complaints like the lack of a headphone jack, the lack of micro SD memory card support, yada yada. Now, another smartphone that offers a stock Android vibe at this mid-range price point is the Motorola Edge 30 Neo, the most affordable of Moto's trio of fresh edge blowers. This comes in special colours handpicked by Motorola's latest partner Pantone, including this spangly Very Peri option. Around the other side is a gorgeous 120Hz POLED display, although the Neo serves up more basic performance than its siblings with a Snapdragon 695 running the show. There's still enough grunt to run the latest games, albeit on lower graphics settings if they're proper memory guzzlers like Genshin Impact. And the 4000 mAh capacity battery, while a little bit smaller, still offers good returns, helped by the more energy efficient platform, and you've got that 68W wired charging and full wireless charging support here as well. However, the 64MP primary camera sensor does lag behind similarly priced rivals such as the Pixel 6a, so if photography is a priority for you, I'd say maybe go Google instead. And I also gotta say, in my experience so far, that Motorola isn't quite as dependable as Google and some of its other rivals when it comes to the software updates, so if that's a big thing for you, you might be swayed elsewhere. Another one of the best stock Android mid-range phones right now is the Nokia X30 5G, which just happens to be an eco-friendly blower to boot, thanks to its fully recycled aluminium chassis and mostly recycled plastic bits. Packed inside of this tree-hugging body is that Snapdragon 695 chipset, which once again does the job for gaming, while the 6.43-inch OLED display and the stereo speaker setup means good times when streaming a bit of the Disney Pluses or even your Uncle Spurt here on YouTube. Manufacturer HMD Global is rather generously guaranteeing 3 OS updates beyond Android 12, so that means you're covered all the way up to Android 15, so hopefully you won't be hoying this phone in the bin after just a year or two because it's out of date. And they're also chucking in a 3-year warranty as well, so no worries if it muffs up. The 50MP camera features built-in optical image stabilization, and it's one of the better snappers found on a Nokia smartphone, working well even in quite low light, if again not quite up to those Pixel standards. Like some of its other mid-range rivals here, the Nokia X30 is fully water resistant as well, and while the 4200 mAh capacity battery can't be charged wirelessly unfortunately, it will at least see you through a full day of use, no problems at all. As long as you're not constantly bashing those annoying little gribbly hill troll things in Genshin Impact, of course. And if you're all about performance, you should also be well tempted by the brilliant Poco F4, which is only a minor evolution over the older F3, but still proper boss. This uses Xiaomi's MIUI launcher in a slightly pockified form, and this sports a more of a stock Android vibe these days compared with back in the past, except with tons of extra bonus bits lathered on top. Stuff like the dedicated gaming tools, and if you are a gamer, well, that Snapdragon 870 chipset is a blinder, offering impressive grunt for any kind of gaming. You can even run the mighty memory guzzling Genshin Impact on high detail settings with next to no judders, helped along by Poco's dedicated cooling tech. Battery life is pretty bloody great. You've also got 5G support on top of Wi-Fi 6, so connectivity, no worries whatsoever. Poco has once again packed in a 6.67-inch OLED screen with 120Hz refresh and Full HD Plus resolution, although the sheer size of this screen means that images aren't quite as crisp as some rivals. However, you've got incredible contrast and full HDR10 Plus support, while colours are proper poppy. As for that 64MP primary camera, well, it's absolutely fine, if not as good as the Pixel 6a, again in more testing conditions, pretty much like most other phones in this best mid-range mobiles roundup. You got to put up with the usual downsides as well, no headphone jack, no memory card support, and also Poco phones like Xiaomi phones, basically anything that runs MIUI, tend not to get much in the way of software support going forwards as well, so you might only get 1 or 2 OS upgrades, maybe only a couple of years of security patches as well, and it might not be the most timely at coming through. Also, bear in mind that the Poco F4 isn't a massive upgrade over the older F3 either, which still sports, for instance, that excellent Snapdragon 870 performance, and in my eyes, slightly better design as well. So if you do happen to see the Poco F3 going cheap, well, definitely check it out. Another solid choice is Xiaomi's Redmi Note 11 Pro Plus. Clunky name, but a decent handset, boasting smooth performance with the Dimensity 920 chipset. This MediaTek brain can breeze through games of Genshin Impact, while battery life is also decent. And even if you do somehow manage to completely drain that battery throughout the course of the day for whatever reason, well, it doesn't even really matter, because the Redmi Note 11 Pro Plus supports ludicrously fast 120 watt wired charging. That's proper mental. The huge 6.7-inch Super AMOLED screen is a stunner, supporting HDR10 streaming plus 120Hz refresh for any apps that can hit those highs. You got stereo speaker setup, headphone jack, expandable storage, all the goodies you love to see. On the software side, it's once again MIUI 12 in all of its batshit mental splendor, complete with those unfortunate tardy software rollouts. While the 108MP main camera sensor does a respectable job at this sort of price point, if not quite hitting the highs of the Pixel. Check out my full unboxing where I also compare the Pro Plus with the Redmi Note 11 and the Redmi Note 11 Pro. So many Xiaomi smartphones, it's a wee bit confusing at times. And I also recently had the chance to check out the fresh Xiaomi 12 Lite, which again doesn't serve up the best camera tech in this comparison, but is a solid all-round blower in pretty much every other respect. Qualcomm's older Snapdragon 778G chipset provides the power here, but that still copes admirably with everything up to and including a good bit of gaming. The smaller 4300 mAh battery still offers all-day play without stress, and it can be refilled quickly with 67 watt charging support. And that 108 megapixel camera does its job well in everything except for more murky conditions. It may not stand out particularly in any way, but the Xiaomi 12 Lite is still a good one and worth grabbing if you do see it in a sale. And another decent option at this budget price point is Samsung's Galaxy A53, even if it's not quite as good in some ways as the older A52s. For just under 400 quid, you've got a choice of 4 colours, including awesome blue. I'm not sure I'd really personally describe it as awesome, it's more of a, that's quite nice, rather attractive, don't mind that at all. I also love the IP67 dust and water resistance, something shared with the Pixel, and Samsung fans will enjoy the feature-filled One UI experience that's not too different from the S22 flagships. And Samsung has also promised A53 fans several years of security and OS updates, similar to the Nothing phone, the Pixels, the OnePluses, etc. That 6.5-inch 120Hz Super AMOLED screen is a cracker, chucking out sharp Full HD Plus images complete with Samsung's trademark colours that positively pop, although you can opt for more natural output in the display settings. It's definitely a good one for your Netflix and Disney Plus, and despite the lack of HDR streaming support. And core blimey, lo and behold, the Samsung Galaxy A53 also supports micro SD memory cards to expand the storage, something you'll barely ever find at this sort of price point anymore. Although unfortunately, while the older A52s also had a headphone jack, that has been culled here for the fresher A53, boo, hiss, etc. Sadly, where the A53 falls down a bit is the Exodus chipset of Samsung's own creation that's stuffed inside. With everyday use, you'll see quite a few judders, while memory sucking games like Genshin Impact are more or less unplayable. Thankfully, the 5000 mAh battery does at least make some amends, keeping you going all day long, even with plenty of hands-on time. And I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but while the camera tech's pretty good, it's not quite as good as the Pixel 6a when it comes to more testing low light conditions. Now, one smartphone that's recently been slashed to just under £400 is the Honor 70, another solid all-rounder with a dreamy look and feel. That's according to Honor, at least. It's another big one at 6.67 inches, and it certainly is striking with a gorgeous OLED screen and some serious audio smarts. The Snapdragon 778G is in charge, complete with GPU Turbo X shenanigans to keep supported games running silky smooth. That 4800 mAh battery will last you all day long unless you're never off the bloody thing, and meanwhile you've got 66 watt wired charging support as well, so it powers back up in no time at all. No wireless charging support this time around though. Sony's fresh 54 megapixel IMX800 camera sensor can capture good looking snaps even with crazy HDR to contend with, and there's the usual ultra wide option if needed. While the fresh solo cut mode is handy if you want to shoot a vertical and horizontal video simultaneously. Overall, the Honor 70 is a good one, especially at this new lower price point. Now, my final smartphone recommendations at this mid-range price point come courtesy of Realme, a Chinese manufacturer well worth keeping an eye on. They've put out some absolute crackers lately, and my first recommendation is the Realme GT Master Edition. This slick looking 6.4-inch blower boasts many of the same advantages as its peers, including a gorgeous Samsung Super AMOLED panel with 120Hz refresh, a proper bit of eye candy when you're streaming endless Netflix or blasting through your favourite games, all of which run beautifully courtesy of the Snapdragon 778G chipset and dedicated cooling tech. And you got full 5G support as well as Wi-Fi 6 connectivity as well, so no endless buffering when you're trying to enjoy a nice bit of tentacle hentai action. Did I say tentacle hentai action? I obviously meant streaming a good bit of classic British sitcom action on BritBox. Yeah, bit of Urang my lord. Good stuff. The 4300 mAh battery isn't as big as some others in this roundup, but you shouldn't struggle to last a full day, while there's 65W super dart charge support if you need to give it a top up. And Realme's 64MP rear camera and 32MP selfie shooter are pretty respectable for this price point too. One of the most recent mid-rangers to launch globally is the Realme 10 Pro Plus, and while it's not officially come to the UK just yet, I've got all of my fleshy bits crossed that this gorgeous blower does make it here soon. This 6.7-inch smartphone is ridiculously thin and light, with a display that pretty much entirely fills that front end. I have experienced some slight responsiveness issues as the screen does curve around the edges, so it is easy for your palm flab to intrude. But that's one of my only real complaints here. Besides that, the Realme 10 Pro Plus is mostly a joy to use. That 120Hz OLED screen is matched with a powerful stereo speaker setup, so movies and games look and sound fantastic. And speaking of games, MediaTek's Dimensity 1080 handles Genshin and other memory-hogging titles impressively well, even on those higher graphics settings. However, that camera once again isn't as good as the Pixel 6a's, often struggling with moving subjects. It's not a bad snapper by any means, it's just not one of the better efforts in this roundup. And last up, a quick big up for the Realme GT Neo 3T, which certainly stands out almost as much as the Nothing phone with this dash yellow design. You'll either love it or think it looks like a pile of puke, but either way you're getting a gorgeous 120Hz AMOLED screen, strong audio support, a mighty 5000 mAh battery with 80W charging, and that same Snapdragon 870 performance as the Poco F4. So that right there is my pick of the very best mid-range smartphones you can snap for yourself right now for a budget of £400 or under. But before I bugger off, a quick shout out to a couple of smartphones that almost made the final cut, including the HTC Desire 22 Pro, which can be snaffled in a bundle right now with the Vive Flow VR headset. It's a decent blower despite the ropey design, offering a couple of rare features like wireless charging and water resistance, along with the lovely stock Android UI. And also consider the Oppo Reno 8 5G, especially if you see it on the cheap. Fair play, it isn't quite a Nothing phone or a Pixel, but you do have 80W fast charging and some respectable specs, plus a feature-dense ColorOS experience. And if your budget is a bit too tight for most or even all of these smartphones, well, no worries, Uncle Spurt has you covered. You can go check out my roundup of the very best budget-friendly smartphones that cost under £300 or even £200 right now. I've personally tested and reviewed shag loads of these budget-friendly handsets, so lots of good recommendations for you there. So have yourselves a lovely rest of the week. Please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech, and catch you next time. Cheers everyone, love you!